Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to the VET S.O.S podcast network. Oh, today we got a special for y'all. Remember, you don't have to drown in the sea of transition. You grab that VET S.O.S Lifeline. We're here to help. And today, sitting on the stoop, we're about to get the scoop with my man right here. We're going to be stepping into a story that proves something powerful. Where you start does not determine where you finish. Because for some people, life doesn't begin with opportunity. It begins with survival. Our guest today, Tristian Smith, takes us through a journey marked by poverty, loss, trauma, and the foster care system. But also hope, resilience, and the courage to rise against all odds. And that's what we're going to be talking about right here, his book. This isn't just a memoir. This is his testimony. This is about what happens when life stacks everything against you and you decide to rise anyway. Now let's dive in. My man T, what's going on, brother? How we doing today?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you for being here. Thank you for putting this book out there for others to get a hold of it and to go along with this journey with you. But I can't wait till we dive in, because I shared with you before we hit the record button how people's lives are similar, running in parallels. Because when I read your book, I see myself in my situation, what I went through, and your book. Okay, so I just want to say thank you on behalf of me and behalf of the Kings 5 and 10 years from now. The past Kings want to say thank you, because everything you put in this book, I dealt with in my journey and travel. And I know others that's going to be listening in and watching, once they hear the stories, like, wow, he got through that and he's here anyway. And he wrote a book and he's going out on speaking engagement. He's sharing his story about the foster care system. T did that. Yes. And you can too. So let's dive in, T. So I appreciate you coming on the show, because I reached out. We have a mutual friend. Her name is Hope White, and she shared just a little bit about your story. And then she said, you know what, you need to reach out to T, because y'all have something special together. Like, and I was like, really? She's like, yeah. So when I reached out to you, you did not hesitate. You did not hesitate. Like, yeah, man, how can I help? And I was like, hey, I have a podcast on the VET S.O.S network, man. We out here trying to push information out to the veteran community, to the human community, right? Because it goes outside of the veteran channels, right? Like if you're breathing air, this information is good for you. And you respond, and he's like, man, what you need, brother? And I said, hey, if you could send a copy of your book so I could read anything. And I took it on the unplugged time. So if you have not had any unplugged time, and I'm talking about unplugged from social media, unplugged from the world, and just have time for yourself, for self-care and self-love, that's when I grabbed his book and I really dove into it. And it spoke to me in profound ways that if I had the other devices around, I wouldn't have got what he was putting in there. So for that, I want to say thank you. You didn't even know that till just now, because you reached out to me like, hey man, did you get a chance to read the book? I was like, yeah. And I sent you a picture. I was like, y'all right here on the, watching some waters, but I'm going through the pages and it's hitting me hard, brother. So thank you for that. But before we start, I know a little bit, I know the scoop on you just a little bit. I know the audience wants to know, who is Tristian? What's the scoop on you, brother? What's the scoop on you?
Well, to tell you a little bit about me, I'm a former foster youth, retired Army officer. I'm the author of Against All Odds. My early life, it was marked by instability, loss, obviously growing up in the foster care system. But over time, I learned how much structure, discipline, and the right support system can change your life. The military obviously gave me purpose, leadership, and a deeper sense of identity. And writing Against All Odds gave me a way to turn my lived experience into something that could help other people. And today I use that same experience to advocate for foster youth, to speak about resilience, service, and the power of support systems.
Wow. So when I was going through this book, these are the areas that hit me when I was going through, like, overcoming poverty and early trauma. I said, well, I checked that box, right? And this is why I talk about that, how our lives run parallel. And what I was a vision, what I seen in my life, a journey, in my time on this earth, stuff that you wrote through. I didn't go through the foster care system, but we talked about that, right? The military is something like a foster care system, with the changing of families and different environments. You know, the reality of the foster care system, right? The mental health and the survival mindset. You know what you had here in the book. I resonated with that. The transition from survival to you find out your purpose. You going out there and you being a foster care advocate to share people about the system. The education as a turning point. You know, you say, yo, you used to be able to sit in school. Like, school was easy for you, but like that was your escape place, right? That you wrote in the book. Like, man, I found school to be my release point, right? Leadership through lived experience. I say, man, yep, I resonate something with that. System change and being an advocate. For me, it's mental health. For you, it's the foster care system. Faith, hope, and identity. Those three things that you talked about in the book. You also talked about the family loss and the rebuilding phase of your life and your legacy that you're leaving behind beyond the circumstances, to go outside the box, to be more than just. So I want to say thank you for that. That's how, when I was going through the book, that's what I focused on. That's how it was hitting me hard. And right here, look, you see all the doggy ears in there. The dog, yeah, I was folding them things, brother. I was folding them things. So before we start off, I always like to ask the authors, what made you come up with the book page front cover? Like, you know what? I want to show half of Tristian. I want to show this portion right here and have the words against all laws across the top side.
Um, you know what? You might be the first person that's ever asked me that. I think it was just an aesthetic. I was presented with a couple of options. When we were doing a photo shoot for, various book covers, and um the photographer did like a half face uh photo.
Mm,
And when we were reviewing the spread, I was like, oh, I like this,
mm.
because it kind of gives that mystique.
Yes.
It gave the mystique to it, to where, like, you don't know what's behind. You don't know what's behind the cover, or you don't know what's behind, or what a person has gone through. Um,
Mm.
so that's kind of like what we were going for with that cover.
Right. And that's what I was sharing with you, is about having that mask on, right? You know, I was sharing with you before, like, you know, we have that mask, so people don't know what you've been through, right? They read the book, but actually going through your journey, and you share some of it in the book, but you didn't go into too much detail, right? We told, like, oh, maybe I should have added this or added that. The book should be 300-400 pages. I said, man, the book is perfect because it leaves the reader to kind of put their stuff inside of there too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you give the reader some room to insert themselves. That's how it felt for me, right? When I inserted myself into your book, it gave me chance to move and navigate freely through there. And soon as you start off the book, you gave homage and shout out to a whole list of people. What's the scoop on that, brother? Why did you start out your book like that? Hey, I want to, I want to give a shout out to the doc, right? I want to give a shout out to all these people. Like, what made you just start off before you even get into the chapters? That's like, yo, this is the most important thing. I want, soon as the readers turn the page after the after the chapter breakdown, I want people to see the individual that helped me get to where I'm at, especially the doctor.
Well, I want people to know who's responsible for why I'm here. I'm not on this podcast talking to you right now if not for those people who invested their time, their patience, the love, the compassion, pulling me off to the side and having, important conversations with me. They a lot of those people invited me into their homes. A lot of them were foster parents, a lot of them were case managers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the case managers, a lot of them were those same people who picked me up after school or during school after I'd been suspended, and instead of just taking me somewhere and just dropping me off until I went back to school, they had those conversations with me about how I was wasting my potential because they saw the intelligence I possessed and they saw the potential I had. um those conversations didn't get wasted, obviously, because I remembered what they said, and I took, I could, I went and did something and made something of myself. So I want people to see the village that it
Mm.
took to get me here, and that's the kind of village it takes to get a foster youth from from within the system to becoming a successful adult.
Yeah, and you shared the statistics right before we get into the the chapter. You said majority of foster kids, they age out of the foster care system. And then you break it down, like, so many become homeless, so many don't even complete high school. You said only 50%.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the scoop on that? Because I know that you aged out of the system, but you put the statistic up front so people could know, like, hey, this is, because I didn't know too much about the foster care system until I read your book, and I said, man, let me look into that. I say, wow, I did not
So
know the numbers were so intense.
so to put it in perspective,
Mm,
I'm getting ready to graduate from Johns Hopkins University. That is one of the most
congrats.
prestigious
Yes.
universities in the country, if not the world. When I graduated high school, I graduated with a 2.6 GPA, and that is with a very, very strong support system. Now, by academic standards, that's extremely average. Now, take your middle of the road foster youth who doesn't have consistent foster parents, who may have attachment issues, behavioral issues. They may even have learning challenges, and you can begin to see how, being
Mm,
shuffled through the foster care system, where they're not getting the support that they need to maintain their grades, and that is how you end up with that 50%. So I was one of the lucky ones, and for me to go from being an average academic performer in high school to now being, getting ready to graduate from a university that's up there with your Ivy League schools. It's a
right.
testament. So, um, the academics do not get um they don't get looked at hard enough when it comes to our foster youth, and that's just one of the biggest issues why foster youth don't find a lot of success as adults, because in order to make good money as an adult, you have to go to college, and to go to college you have to get good
Right.
grades. And
Right.
so it's like it's a trickle down effect that
Yes.
starts with good grades in high school, and if you don't have those, then you're already 5 steps behind as an adult.
Yes. And you talk about 5 steps behind as adult, but before you even enter the system, and you talked in the chapter one of your book, Poverty and Loss. What did survival look like in the early years?
So, for me growing up,
Mhm.
it was me, my younger brother, and my mother. I grew up in Section 8 housing. We grew up in a Section 8 housing area called Peabody Apartments. Oftentimes, you could hear gunshots ringing out at any
Mhm.
given time during the day. Um, I w- I would see shootings and stabbings from the screen porch door, from my apartment. We didn't have a car, so obviously we walked everywhere, whether it was
Yeah.
the chilly winters or the sweltering Georgia heat. Um, but most of the time, my biggest memories were of my mother's struggles with asthma. And if you've never seen anyone battle or deal with asthma, my mother had this huge breathing apparatus, this huge breathing machine that sat next to her recliner. And with this breathing machine, there were these big plastic tubes that had a mask connected to it. And my mother spent hours on this machine where she was just gasping for air, and this machine was responsible for giving her oxygen and putting that oxygen back into her body. And so there was like this rhythmic hiss that you would hear. And it was kind of like the soundtrack per se to my childhood because she spent so
Mm.
much time on it. You know, she dealt with a lot of health issues, but asthma was like that one was like her big health issue. And so um March, I think it was March 26th, 1996. One morning, we woke up. Me and my little brother woke up to uh, an ambulance outside of our apartment. We walked downstairs and we saw the paramedics loading our mother into the ambulance. And little did we know that was going to be the last time that we ever saw her. Um, I remember I remember going to school, I think a day or so later, and my aunt and uncle were sitting in I got called up to the counselor's office, and my aunt and uncle were in there, and they were, grief stricken. You could see tears in their eyes, and they began to explain to me that my mom had passed away. And so at that point, your mom, she's your protector, she's your provider, and now she's gone. And it was basically at that moment where it felt like my childhood ended. So
Yeah. So now you had to be big brother, right? Because you said you had a little brother. So what did that teach you at a young age? So now you have to step up into the protective role, right? So you're like, man, I have to take care of my little brother. It's just him and I, my aunt, uncle, but now it's just us two, and I'm big bro. Like I got to make sure my little bro is good. So when you got that mess when you was at the school, it's like, man, did you start to? I I don't even know how to ask, but from what I see, like, what was your thought? Like, man, it was because you was very young, right? So I know you still trying to grasp the concept. Like, what you mean? I just seen him take her away in the ambulance, and now we're here. Now you're sharing the story.
yeah, so um and when it comes to my role as a big as a brother, and I say this now, and I didn't want to talk about it as a kid and as a young adult, but it was one of those roles where I failed miserably. Like I failed at it, and to this day I'm ashamed of it. I did not protect my little brother the way I should have. Um, those those big brother instincts just didn't kick in. Like I kept him close, but it wasn't like in that protective way that I should have. And you'll find out like once we moved into our my aunt and uncle's house, and that situation started. um it really kind of split us apart.
Yeah, and that situation you talking about when we transitioned to chapter 2 was living with the devil, right? Because that's what you have written out, and you shared in the book of how y'all was living situation, right? Like you had to stand against the wall. You had to hold your hands up high. Like different course correction active actions that's not good today that was being done back then, right? And so to me, when I read this chapter, it was very powerful. What made you say, you know what? I'm gonna title this chapter "Living with the Devil" because I read it in the book. I was like, man, I could see where you was coming from when you titled this chapter that.
Well, there isn't a world where the way that me and my little brother were treated, um, especially after they had just lost their mother. So they're dealing with all, me and him were dealing with all kinds of grief. And then you proceed to beat and belittle and just treat us the way that you did for over a year and think that it's okay. Like you, prisoners of war are treated with more compassion than what we were treated with.
Right.
And so um when our uncle, he would pit me and my little brother against each other, um and I think that's kind of like where that divide began to happen. My aunt, uh she was she was she was very abusive also, but it was mostly our uncle where he would like choke us unconsciously. um I remember he woke us up in the middle of the night and drove us to, I think it was some type of lake, and he threw us in the lake,
Yeah.
and he drove off and left us just in the middle of nowhere in the pitch black darkness for like 20 or 30 minutes. And then he popped back up just laughing like it was a demonic kind of laugh. Um and it was all because we had gotten in trouble at school, or I had gotten in trouble at school because um he was too young. He hadn't gotten in school yet. But um yeah, we would be cutting the grass. Like, mind you, I'm like 7 years old,
Yeah, you
and
said that was your
he's
job.
like
Yeah.
4,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're both out there pushing
Pushing that
lawnmowers.
lawnmower. Yes.
Yeah, in like 100-degree Georgia weather with like this much water. And so if we weren't cutting the grass fast enough, he would beat us. If we didn't cut it in a straight enough line, we would get beat. And then after we got done, we would end up being forced to stand in the corner of the yard we just cut and be forced to stand in that corner for, an hour or two after we had just finished cutting the grass. So it kind of culminated into, it was one night where he had hit me in the eye with a belt buckle, and the entire white of my eye was like bloodshot red, and he had told me don't go to school the next day. But I ended up ignoring the order, and I got on the bus. I ended up going to my teacher. My teacher in turn sent me to the principal's office where I got questioned by the resource officer. They asked me to remove my clothes. And when I removed my clothes, I had like bruises of like every different color. I'm talking orange, red, purple, blue
Mhm.
on like 50% of my body. And so what uh then they ended up asking me about my little brother, and I was like, yeah, he's at home and he's got similar bruises and scars. But what I didn't know until years later was my uncle had tried to drown my little brother in the bathtub, and my little brother had busted his head on the corner of the bathtub, and he almost bled to death. And
Wow.
he's 34 right now, and he still has a scar on the left side of his head it's probably an inch and a half long. He's still got that scar from when he was 4 years old. So we're talking 30 years ago when that
Wow.
happened. So the funny thing is, we ended up getting sent back to their home after the police found all this out. Like, that's the wild part. We
Wow.
ended up going back. They ended up doing an investigation. We ended up going back to live with them for like maybe a week or so. And then we ended up getting placed in foster care after that.
So how did you endure those moments? Like, because y'all was with them for about a year, right? Because I know about 12 months. So
Yeah, it
how
was about
did
a
you
year.
About a year, right? So how did you endure those moments? Like, cause 12 months. Look, I tell you, when I went through my stuff, when I was waiting for the EMS, and that, it felt like an eternity, and it was only a couple of minutes. So you had to go through that for 12 months. How did you endure those moments?
Well, first off, when I was writing the book, I didn't realize it was only 12 months. I thought it would, man, it felt like I was there like 2 or 3 years.
Mm,
And then I was talking to Preston, my brother, and he was like, dude, it was only 12 months we were there. And I was like, dang. Um, so to a kid, those 12 months felt like an eternity. And so you're just hoping that somebody sees something, somebody says something. Like there would be times where we'd be in public and I'd want to like run away,
mm,
but just fear prevented me from doing it. Or, maybe I ran away and my brother would get left behind or something.
right.
Um, but you just there were some days where I thought maybe I was just gonna die, literally, as a kid, and I don't wish that feeling on any child. And
Right.
what's sad is my uncle nor my aunt did any jail time for that. Like the things
Wow.
that they did to us, they should still be in jail for what they did to us. And
Wow.
they didn't serve a minute in jail.
Wow. So you talk about, you went to school, you showed the officer, the HRO, your guidance counselor, and then they sent the law enforcement out to and then they said, we're gonna put you into the foster care system. So what was your, cause I know in the book you said, man, you thought it was a relief. Like, man, I'm finally getting away from this situation. I'm gonna be put someplace where I'm safe. What was your first experience entering the foster care system? Cause I know that you gave a shout out to the first that you wanted to stay there, and you got moved to a different home. But what was your first experience entering the foster care system?
So we got kicked. So my first foster home, and honestly, I want to say they were really nice people. It was just that we were me and Preston were just messed up from being knocked in our heads so much. Like we had literally been beaten damn near to death. We weren't getting fed the way we were supposed to. So we were
Mm-hmm.
waking up at night and going in the pantry and taking food and hiding food, and um we had behavioral issues. Like we didn't know how to express our emotions. Me and Preston were getting into fights. It was the first time like we didn't like we were literally coming home and we were walking and standing in a corner as if we were still living with our aunt and uncle because it was just memory. It
Right, muscle
was
memory. Right.
muscle memory. And like our foster parents had to sit us down and tell us that you're not with your aunt and uncle anymore. You don't have to do this anymore. And like it's it was sad because like we were it was almost like we were brainwashed.
Mm,
And so they were, from what I remember, they were an awesome family. It was just that they couldn't handle two kids that were just we were
yeah.
we
You
were just
traumatized. Yeah.
we were yeah, that trauma just it destabilized their home.
Yeah. So how did that impact your identity, right? Because now you're trying to restructure, or as I shared with you, just try to pack in your last experience and try to push away, but not really addressing it. How did that impact your identity of, man, I really, I like the family, but we're too much for them. Like, how did you start to dial it back or tap into, like, man, I really need to get some help with try to figure it out because I don't want to keep moving around.
I think as a kid, you don't really pay attention to that. You just
Mm,
start questioning, why am I losing out on all these placements? I think that Um, you know, you go you're getting dropped. It's almost like a transaction. Like you you have your stuff in these trash bags because you don't have suitcases, obviously, and your caseworker makes this brief introduction. You walk into this place and you have a brief introduction with this person, and you don't know to trust them or not because the people you just considered your family literally have been trying to kill you for the last 12 months. So you're not trying to build any attachment to these people. Um, so um you feel like a stranger in a home.
Mm,
You don't ever feel comfortable. So it's just the cycle just becomes repetitive.
yeah,
Um and so even the people that may seem like good people, they don't understand it. They just think that, hey, I'm providing a kid with a bed and food and clothing when then there's an emotional attachment aspect to it that so many foster parents don't they ignore.
right,
They don't know how to connect with the foster youth emotionally. They think that
right,
if I give them a TV and video games and 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 you know, good food and some clothes that they're good, and 99% of the time that's just not enough.
right. And then you got that glimmer of hope. In chapter 4, you met a great family.
Yeah.
When was the first time you felt like, man, this could be it?
Yeah,
What gave you a reason for keep going?
I think that's when uh that was the chapter about the Wyatts, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I had initially met them a couple of years prior. They were running an emergency shelter, and so I had stayed there for I think like 30 days, and then I had went and ended up going to a an orphanage, got kicked out, and ended up back at the emergency shelter where they were still running it. Only this time they wanted me to come and live with them because they were also foster parents on the side where, you know, they were allowed one kid to come and live with them because of the
Mm,
level of care that they provided to foster youth. They read my case file apparently and they thought I'd be a good fit in their home. And so one of the first things they did was that they took me to see my mother's memorial. No other foster parent had done that. They paid for the flowers. I remember um, they got out of the car with me.
mm,
They they had their hands on my shoulder. They listened to me cry. They did they did all of that. They did all those things that they didn't have to do, and then I felt absolutely comfortable with them. We got some funny looks when we went in public because obviously they were a Caucasian couple and
yeah,
I was a biracial kid, but I didn't care because,
right,
they when they went out to eat, I went out to eat with them.
right.
I was part of the family. They made sure I had a good Christmas. They made sure you know, I went to a good school. It was like one of the first places where my school environment wasn't like I wasn't attending a bad school.
Right.
So, I was in advanced classes. Um, so everything
They actually
was
listened to
great.
your concern, right? They actually
Yeah,
sat down and had conversations with you and like, how can we make you better? Like, what can we do to help you assist you along? And that's
exactly.
where the road to college came in, right? Because you really was, but they seen that you had a niche for education. They seen that you was, that was your safe space. You know, what pushed you towards education despite everything was going on? He's like, man, in the book it said like that was my one piece of peace, right? It's like, hey, I love to learn. Learning is my, that's the way I took it. Learning is my peace. For me, the gym right now is my peace, right? I go to the gym and I just kind of lose time in the gym just to so I can focus on me. What about you?
Well, I I just feel like like and the gym is my second home as well. I spend a lot of time in the gym, but I also spend a lot of time learning about history. I spend a lot of time
Mm,
reading about various topics, and I just think that just like the gym, learning is hard work, and people
mm,
don't like hard work, and you can easily separate yourself from ordinary people or from majority of people by increasing your knowledge. And between increasing your knowledge and becoming physically fit, you're going to increase
yeah,
you're going to increase your earning potential with your knowledge if you go and get the right education and the right certifications. Those things are going to make you stand out from 90% of the people because most people don't want to go and do those things.
right.
So, um I was taught those lessons early, and the Wyatts were one of those people that stressed that to me,
Mhm.
because those were the first people I saw that went to the gym regularly. Like
Right.
I would be sitting in the car at the park while they went and ran like 7, 8 miles around in the park. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I would be playing my Game Boy and they would be running around in the park, or we'd be at the gym and I would be sitting in the lobby while they would be lifting weights. They were the first
Consistency.
people, they were the first people that I saw that were like really adamant about exercise. And so
Consistency.
and so later on when I was in college and I was a fat kid, I remembered some of those lessons that they, from
Right.
living with them, and it kind of like pushed me in the direction of wanting to instill and to make fitness a part of my lifestyle. So
Right.
there's a lot of life lessons that I took from living with them.
Yeah. But what obstacles almost stopped you? Because I know you made a little mention of it. What obstacles almost stopped you from going forward? Like you came to the road to college, you went into the ROTC program, and so all this stuff to get her. Because you said in the book, said you needed to find direction and structure. Because that's one thing that you was missing was structure, and the ROTC program, you felt that structure was there, that thing that you was missing to, including what the Wyatts provided.
Um ask that question one more time.
So I know you talk about like when you went into the ROTC program. In the book you said that you was looking, you got that structure because in the military is structure, right? And that's one thing that you didn't have in your younger childhood years was that structure because you kept moving from house to house. That you even lost count of how many different homes you was in, right? You kept to like, wow, I remember these people are just so many I can't remember, but you finally said, man, that road to college and during the college phase you came across the Rossi program, like, man, you know what? This have structure. The wise told you about that. You know what I'm saying? Like that structure feel like, man, I need to have barriers or I need to have guardrails up to keep me locked in and focused.
Yeah, so I think that, are you talking about mentorship? Is that what you were referring to?
The, the mentorship, and then when you went into the ROTC program.
So, when I went into college, when I got into college, I'm kind of I don't know what I want to major in. I'd probably changed my major like two or three times. Like, I'm 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 kind of like floundering in college at this point, and I get into ROTC. I even get suspended from the ROTC program once because I didn't have the discipline to show up to events. I wasn't showing up to PT formation, and I was just being an overall poor team player. Um, and so I got a second opportunity to do ROTC, and you know, I what I learned from ROTC is being a consummate teammate,
Mm,
um, having people's backs. Um, you can't you can't go through life alone, and you can't do. I realized you couldn't complete the ROTC program alone. So
mm,
depending on my fellow cadets, um, being a team player, obviously, and just having that discipline, because once you get into the real army, people are going to be depending on you. You're going to be a
Right.
leader. You're going to have people that are going to be expecting you to uphold a standard uh, for younger soldiers and younger officers to abide by. So those are some of the things I had to learn as an ROTC cadet.
Right. And did success feel different than you imagine? Like you got into ROTC, you got to the unit. He's like, man, so this is what it feels like to be part of the military.
So my first, are you talking about when I got to my first initial unit after
Right.
ROTC?
Yes.
So my first initial unit, it was actually I was actually assigned to an Apache battalion out in South Korea. So I'm in a brand new country, away from home. Um, I'm doing something that I'm what how old am I? I'm 27 years old. I'm in a country, I'm in a place that I never thought I'd imagine I'd be, thinking back as a foster youth. And so I'm learning, I'm being a sponge. So picking up uh I'm following my commander everywhere he goes. I'm being that good lieutenant. So sitting in meetings, taking notes, watching what the older lieutenants and older captains are doing, and and also listening to what my senior NCOs are doing. As a
Mhm.
lieutenant, you're gonna have senior NCOs that you're going to be working with, and your job is to, while you outrank them, your job is to uh kind of be a sponge and listen to
Yeah.
their experience, because these senior NCOs have 15, 16, 17 years of
Right.
military knowledge. And, you can't be the know-it-all second lieutenant that, that has 6 months of experience trying to do everything and tell everybody what to do. So you kind of have that balance. So those were some of the important lessons that I had to understand right away. And I think I did so pretty well.
Yeah. No, you did, because you did your time in, you was honorably discharged, and now, it's where we get to I call it the pivotal chapters, right? The advocating for change, right? Because now you, you went from survivor, right? You aged out the system, but you survived the early stages of the foster care system, right? And then you made it through college. And those numbers you made that we talked about earlier, those numbers are very, very, very minute and slim to make it through high school, to make it through undergrad, graduate, you know what I'm saying, in the military, right? So you defied the odds against all odds. That's how your book title said, right? Against all odds. Now you say, you know what? I'm going to start after life after the military. I'm going to be an advocate for the foster care system to share with others that people don't know about it. So what made you shift from survivor of the foster care system to advocate?
Um, so I think advocacy is important to me because I know firsthand the difference that just one committed adult can make for
Mhm.
the life of a child. Um, it isn't uh it isn't something you can just go and learn in a textbook. I lived it. So I understand what it feels like to need someone in your corner. I believe that when you've survived something, learned from it, and found your footing, and you've found some relative success, you have a responsibility to reach back and help the next group of kids that are coming behind you.
Yeah, you talk about the next group of kids that come up. So, what is one thing or three things that you want to share with your fellow foster youths that you came through a system, now you're on the other side? What is three things that you want to share with them that I know that they're gonna come across this podcast, and you have made it through the fire per se, and now you're sharing that information with them so they can make it through their fire.
One, the first thing is that the beginning of your story does not define the ending of your story. If you if you decide, you are the one that decides whether or not you're going to make good choices, whether or not uh who your circle of friends are going to be, whether or not you're going to listen to the wisdom and the advice that your foster parents, your family, or whoever is over you, whatever wisdom they provide to you, you have the decision whether or not you're going to listen to that. All right. The next thing I would say is that um to advocate for yourself. You know, you are your own person's biggest voice. If you need something, let it be known that you need something. If you aren't getting something, let your caseworker know. Let your foster parents know. Let your state representative know. You know, learn how to write letters, learn how to write to your congressman. All right. Um you know, I had to learn when I was 13 or 14, if there were things I wasn't getting, if I hadn't gotten a dental appointment or a medical appointment and I needed it, I needed to voice that. All right. There are too
Mm-hmm.
many kids that aren't being told to speak for themselves. And the sooner you realize that you are your biggest advocate, um, the better your life will be. And then the third thing is the world is your oyster. There is nothing that you can't do. It doesn't matter where you came from. You could come from a life of abuse, drug addiction, the death of your parents. It does not matter. Um, you know, if you continue to make good decisions, you if you stress education and you take your education seriously, um, you know, if you decide you want to do the military is a phenomenal option. I don't care what anybody says. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of us got multiple degrees. We own multiple houses. Some of us don't have any student loan debt because of the military. So it's a fantastic option. But the world is your oyster. And one bonus thing is that I would say is do not run in the victim Olympics.
Mm.
Um,
It's
Oftentimes
good.
when things happen to us over and over again, we start to develop that victim mentality, and we start to throw a personal pity party to ourselves. When bad things begin to happen, endure it, get through it, and figure out ways to make your life better. All right,
Mm.
find solutions. Figure out ways on how to develop resilience and move on to the and try to get through to the next day.
Wow. What about to the foster parents everywhere? What you want to share with them? What three things as being a foster youth going through the system? What you want to share with the foster parents out there?
um there is no such thing as a perfect kid. If you
Mm.
think that if you take the ideal kid who grows up in a two-parent household and never has to change homes once in their life, and you you don't consider them perfect. But then you take a kid who's suffered, you know, the death of a parent, maybe both parents, or their parents are incarcerated, or they've been subjected to drug addiction. Some of these kids have alcohol issues. I've seen case files where kids are addicted to alcohol already at 10, 11 years old. You have to understand that that comes with a you have to have a skill set as a foster parent, um, and you have to come with a level of patience that is willing to work with these kids to get through their issues. Um, you have to be prepared to have to have some really hard conversations with your foster kids. You have to be
Mhm.
willing to you have to be willing to attend doctor's appointments. You have to be willing to attend IEP plan meetings. You have to
Mm.
be willing to sit uh, in the school counselor's office. You know, being a foster parent isn't just sending them to bed and feeding a kid and clothing them and, you know, letting the caseworker do everything. Like, there's a lot more to being a foster parent. Like, you actually have to parent. You have to build an emotional attachment with these kids. And if you can figure out how to reach them emotionally, then I think that's where you'll start to see the behavioral changes. Two, don't treat them any different from the kids that are than your biological kids. I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it sucks being a foster parent. If you have to treat your foster kids differently from your regular kids, then I would never ever recommend being a foster parent.
Mm.
I would try to treat them as closely the same as humanly possible. Because foster kids pick up on that stuff, and there's some resentment that gets built up from that.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for that. One last question I want to ask you, like, what does against all odds truly mean? You wrote the book, you published it, you went through your journey. What does against all odds? And we talked a little bit about it, right? Because like I said, like you already anomaly, right? You know, from what you said, 2.6, 2.7 GPA high school,
Yeah.
got to college, got your college degree. Now you're in John Hopkins, going through that one of the top prestige schools, and you're still pushing forward. You're doing speaking engagements. You sharing, being an advocate for the foster care system. You share your knowledge and your impact with others. So, what does against all odds truly like? I want to know the inner TS meaning of against all odds.
Um, I think to me it means that no child chooses the circumstances that they're born into.
Mm,
Um, I think that my life is an example of what happens when resilience meets opportunity, discipline, and support. Um, I want when people look at my book, I want to leave them with the understanding that consistency changes outcomes, and that one
mm,
steady person can help change a child's life. Because um, it takes a support system to help a child overcome those odds. A child can't do it on his or her own. A child can be as resilient as possible, but he still needs steady adults with resources. He still needs adults to build those emotional connections. He still
mm,
needs, teachers at school. He still needs, a place to have a stable learning, a stable home environment. He still needs those adults to teach him or her those life skills that are going to set him up for success as a young adult. So there's so much to it, but it starts with having steady adults, and that is what against all odds means to me.
man, I appreciate it. When I was going through the book, these are some of the things that I highlighted and it hit me hard to where I share with you my journey, right? So I'm gonna share with the audience and share with you for the first time that I jotted down. Survival builds strength. Pain can produce purpose. Your story matters. Resilience is a decision. Growth comes from pain. Hope is powerful. Healing takes time. Every setback teaches something, and you can change your path. Is that not what I shared with you before we hit record? Those things lined up. Like I said, when I read through your book, that's how I aligned with you, and those things hit me. I was like, man, against all odds. Everybody is against their own all odds. You see what I'm saying? Like everybody has a journey against their all odds. Just by waking up against all odds. Just by that transition against all odds. Just by when somebody say you can't do it. Bro, let me share something with you before we sign off. You know what I mean? When I told people the size I got to, and I said I'm gonna lose X amount of pounds, they said ain't no way. I'm over halfway there against all odds. But we shared earlier, right? You gotta, nobody coming to save you, right? That's how
Yeah,
you gotta get up and do it. You gotta roll up your sleeves and you
and
gotta
do
get
the
to work
work. You gotta
and
get to
go to
work,
work.
man.
Speaking of going to work, how can they get in contact with you? How can they get a copy of your book? And how can they find out more information about the foster care system and how can they contribute and help?
So, if so in most states, so I'm part of an organization called CASA. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. It's basically where you are appointed by a judge in your county to you're basically put in a child or typically a group of siblings' life, and your job is to be that one steady presence in their life while they're in the foster care system. Um, Almost every state has a CASA organization. So, if you want to volunteer, that I would absolutely recommend to look for a CASA organization in your county or in your state. Um, Also, most states have a what we call a foster care review office where we oversee foster care cases or foster youth cases, and we look at them monthly, and we kind of make recommendations to the judge for permanency on foster youth. You know, whether we make recommendations to decide whether or not a kid should go back to their family, whether that family environment is stable enough for that child to return, whether or not they should remain in the foster care system, or if there are viable options for adoption. We make those recommendations as well. So look at your foster care review office. Also, if you want to look into being a foster parent, um, there's never enough good foster parents. There's check your state. There's also some foster care specialist organizations, typically in every city or county that you'll have those. So look at those in your areas. Um, as for finding me, you can find me on LinkedIn, uh, Tristian Smith. Um, and you can find my book Against All Odds. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Nobles, and it's on Books a Million as well. If you do get my book, please do me the hugest favor and leave a review on whatever site you buy it from. I want people to see the feedback, and I want to see your feedback, most importantly, on what your thoughts are and what you got out of the book. I want potential readers to become actual readers, and they do that by looking at your feedback from the book. So,
Well, you already know mine is coming. I say as soon as we have this message, I'm going. Brrrr. Yeah, so I just wanted just to share my initial conversation with you first before I put it, so you understand um me, paying respect to you for taking time out to put your thoughts, collective thoughts in your memoir and sharing it with the world. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And remember, this is a great transition. You don't have to drown in the sea of transition. You grab that VET S.O.S Lifeline. We're here to help. Cut through the noise. Reach out to somebody, anybody. Just reach out. You don't have to go through it by you. You don't have to go through this journey by yourself. Trisha said it. I said it. Reach out. You cannot go through this journey of life by yourself. We love you. Until next time, take care. Peace, everybody.